Angst-ridden teenager with a head that's half mohawk, half shaven off, with black lipstick painted on their lips, piercings galore, and clunky black boots. Punk fashion made its debut in the early 70s and carried over into the 80s, where it slowly began to grow and gain a larger following, as it established itself as a nonconformist style that defied the now older baby boomer generation of the 80s. It was a reaction against the peace-loving hippie era and a rejection of the money-obsessed culture the 80s took a turn for at the beginning of the decade. Dressing flashy in a way that attracted unwanted attention was frowned upon, and that is just what British fashion designer Vivienne Westwood wanted. Even to this day, the now 74-year-old sports flaming orange hair and an attitude, which is just what youth wanted to shout and express themselves during the 80s. Westwood was the first person to introduce the idea that punk was not only a musical genre or attitude, but a way of expressing oneself and ideals through fashion. Through Vivienne Westwood's fashion designs, punk obtained coherence as a confrontational stance against the mainstream. Punk in itself was a rebellion. Along with the rise of dress was the punk genre of music, led by bands like The Clash, Ramones, and the Sex Pistols, who were the reason the Westwoods' fashion business took off in the first place. Westwood's business partner, Malcolm McLaurin, returned from a trip from New York with an idea for a trend, and that was when Westwood and he opened a punk-themed boutique called Let It Rock. When she and McLaurin began to dress the Sex Pistols, business for them really began to take off, and once Westwood finally broke it off with her business partner/lover, she launched a line of fashion that was the first of its kind. She has posed nude for Jurgen Teller and caused a scandal when she posed as punk queen of England for the cover of The Tattler, a British fashion magazine. That isn't to say, however, because Westwood was popular among pro-punk generation, that she was accepted everywhere. She began to sexualize punk fashion, including BTSM, bondage gear, safety pins, razor blades, and other things. Westwood pushed the limits of an already misunderstood way of expressing oneself, turning the tables completely and ornamenting the original fashion style. She was widely criticized for a shirt that displayed a homosexual cowboy, her concept of satirical style widely frowned upon. In 1981, Westwood launched her first fashion line titled Pirate. The clothes evoked the golden age of piracy, an age of mishmash clothes, signature pirate hats, with sailors and prostitutes as the runway models. As it is in punk, the garments were unisex. The collection immediately entered the mainstream, finally bringing Westwood's designs and message to a world where it would be taken seriously. In 1982, Westwood began making plans for another line entitled Nostalgia of Mud, inspired by a picture she had seen in National Geographic. It was presented in 1983, where models wore Native American-style clothing with leather frock coats. It displayed a punk style that was mixed with sewing and tailoring in a more natural historical sense. It wasn't until 1985, however, when her career really took off and statements were made that would have a lasting impression up until today. Westwood created a line called Harris Tweed that combined the tutu with an abbreviated form of Victorian crinoline, which is a stiffened or structured petticoat designed to hold out a woman's skirt. Though sexy, the mini critty was almost childish, using bright colors and polka dots. Combining traditional elements of British design, such as plaid and, of course, the edginess of punk, alongside the more unusual elements of her style, made the overall effect more appalling to most people. She used the historical influences in her work, such as the corset. She took original cutting principles and modernized them. Her greatest achievement is the reinvention of the corset, in which she challenged the perception and proportions of the long-dead trend. Westwood designed it so that they were no longer used to make a woman's waist so small that the wearer could barely breathe, like back in old times, but instead used it to showcase other aspects of the body. She put them on men, declaring that women should wear trousers and men dresses, the same dresses that any other female model would wear on the runway. Westwood used gender bending to her advantage, once again showing the idea of expression and diverging away from the mainstream that punk culture so desperately wanted to set themselves apart from. She pushed the boundaries, and once she broke free of them, she began to explore other aspects of culture and fashion that she believed could be used to express oneself. Westwood is also given credit for the tube skirt, which was a hit back in the 80s. With the revival of 80s fashion today, the tube skirt is now making a comeback and widely used in today's fashion. Punk was a turn-of-the-decade style that lacked a voice, one that, when spoken, many people did not understand. Vivienne Westwood was the first to stand up among the masses that flowed against the tide and make a statement through clothing and design that they were, presenting ideas that slowly became accepted, and then, in later years, rewarded and recognized for it. Westwood was the first fashion designer to bring non-traditional designs, thoughts, and ideas and present them in a light that would forever be remembered as revolutionary and inventive.